This is for the people that have an interest, the people that want to be involved.
There was no collusion at all.
This is for the people that are upset and looking for a place to use their voice.
Both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either.
This is for the people that want to make a difference, for the people that want to be on the right side of history.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime.
And I get it. In today's society, it's difficult to have a political opinion and to make it be known. This can be due to fear or because you feel like you don't understand what's going on.
In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
But if he can do it, so can you. Join me every Sunday on Backstories, where we'll discuss all the top political stories and how it applies to all of us. And trust me, this is not your everyday show on politics. Welcome back, everybody. I am so happy to be back with you today here on Backstories with Brandon Dais. And of course, I am that host of this show. My name is Brandon Dais, coming to you from Ohio to discuss the current, latest events that have occurred in politics this week. So as you know, last week I really didn't have so much of a content-filled show, but this episode is sure to be different. I've got a lot to unpack for you, so let's jump right into it. So we're going to begin with the first segment, which is called Moves and Countermoves, where I'm just going to basically just discuss the general headline-making events that have occurred in the politics between Democrats and Republicans. So I want to start the show by just taking another victory lap and basking in the glory of the blue wave that occurred in the 2018 midterm elections, because as you know, effectively now, as of January 3rd, 2019, the Democrats are now in control of the House of Representatives. So, not only did the Democrats take control of the House, that midterm election also led to several historic firsts, as in there were so many different first-time elections that occurred and different results that occurred in the elections. I'm not going to be covering those historic firsts now because I've covered them in a previous episode. However, I do want to spend some time covering the swearing-in process that occurred on January 3rd. On January 3rd, 2019, the Democrats showed that they were all about business. After the House of Representatives elected Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House, the pomp and circumstance of the swearing-in ceremony for the new Congress continued. I want to take a moment, though, to point out and give proper respect and due credit to Nancy Pelosi, who is the first and the only woman to be elected and serve as the Speaker for the House of the Representatives. But she is also the first person to achieve a second term as the Speaker of the House in over 60 years. So kudos to Nancy Pelosi. The Democratic or left side of the House of Representatives reflected a political party that was rich with diversity and was composed of more than 100 women. Meanwhile, the Republican or right side of the House of Representatives reflected everything that the Republican Party is about, that being their beliefs in white supremacy and that white men should control everything. But that's not all that was on display from the Republican side of the House of Representatives. The Republican side exuded a certain disdain and bitterness in the fashion of facial grimaces, crossed arms, and stuffy, uncomfortable body language. But can you really blame them, considering that they lost control of the House of Representatives in a historic defeat? Overall, the entire experience of watching this swearing-in ceremony was a thrilling and exciting moment in our time for our country, because we are now effectively entering into a new era for Trump's mock presidency. So the day that the Democrats, took over the House of Representatives, that swearing-in ceremony was not just all that they accomplished or achieved for the day. Because later on that day, the Democrats in the House of Representatives showed Donald Trump and the Republicans exactly how you should be governing a country. The Democrats did so by approving 2 bills that would reopen the government should the Republican-controlled Senate also pass those bills. And I'm going to cover more about the bill lawmaking process later on in the next segment of this show. Quote, the Democratic package, or bill, to end the shutdown includes a bill to temporarily fund the Department of Homeland Security at current levels through February 8th, as bipartisan talks continue. It was approved 239 votes to 192. And I want to point out that with that 239 number, that means that there were assumingly all 235 Democrats that voted yes, plus 4 Republicans. I have not officially checked the voting breakdown, but I'm just going off of what the numbers are. The Democrats also approved 241 to 190, a separate measure funding the agriculture, interior, and other departments through September 30th, end quote. By making this power move, the Democrats effectively displayed a united front that of a political party that has organization and a willingness to get down to the people's business and not be selfish and only be concerned about what they have going on. The Democrats then went on and achieved another accomplishment in that they passed a rules package, and they had Republican support behind them in a big way. The Democratic Rules Bill is a bill that's going to dictate how the House of Representatives, how they operate and how they will operate over the next 2 years. And what this rules bill did was make legislating in the process of making laws more fair, while also decentralizing power, meaning taking away power from the House Speaker and other leaders in the House of Representatives. And I would be of a special type of disservice to you if I didn't point out that that is a Republican tactic to put all the power of the House of Representatives and all of the Senate into a select few of their leaders. So that way the lawmaking process and things are slanted always in their direction to a select few people, and then the rest of the Republicans get to just be little sheep people. So, I want to get back to the point, and discuss with you exactly what that rules bill that the House of Representatives passed, what it's going to do for the country, This rules bill is going to strengthen or make more strict the ethics rules to hold House of Representative members accountable for their immoral and illegal actions. It's going to encourage Democrats and Republicans to work together by providing a special pathway for bipartisan bills. And bipartisan basically means that it's a bill that was worked on by both Democrats and Republicans. And it's going to provide a special pathway out of the committee and onto the House of Representative floor for a vote, even if it does not have Nancy Pelosi's blessing. It's going to make the process of raising the national government debt ceiling significantly easier. And it removes a rule that allows any member of the House of Representatives to make a motion to unseat or remove the current Speaker of the House, which is something I wouldn't be surprised that the Republicans would try to do to Nancy Pelosi. It's going to establish a committee specifically to take on climate change. It's going to provide members of the House of Representatives up to 72 hours to read new pieces of legislation before they go to the floor, which we all know is something that Republicans removed when they took control of the House. And, they were just jamming through laws and bills just to get them passed. And then it's also going to force members of the House that are accused of sexual misconduct to settle those disputes with their own money instead of using taxpayer dollars, which is something that the Republicans were doing during their plethora of sex scandals that occurred over the past 2 years. But wait, there's certainly a lot more that the Democrats got done. The Democrats have released details on another bill, and it's called the For the People Act. This bill certainly, without a doubt, is a piece of legislation that's designed to go after nobody else than Donnie T. Donald Trump. That's what I call him, Donnie T. I say that because this bill, should it be approved by the Republican-controlled or Republican-majority Senate, which is very unlikely, it would require all presidents and all presidential candidates, as well as vice presidents, to disclose 10 years of their tax returns. Quote, Under the blueprint, presidents, vice presidents, and candidates for those offices would all be required to release 10 years of returns, a move prompted by Trump's refusal to release any returns throughout the 2016 campaign up to present day, breaking with the practice of both Democratic and Republican presidential candidates in recent decades, end quote, which that's just a whole nother precedent. I mean, clearly there's something behind Donald Trump's tax returns that he doesn't want everybody to see because he is a criminal con man. But before the Trump supporters get their panties all up in a bunch, this bill is also going to do other things. It's going to mandate that every political candidate has taxpayer support for their political campaigns. So that way it stops the major influence that all the rich corporations and rich people have on our politicians. Meaning if I were to run for Congress, I can't just solely rely on the money, let's say if Walmart or Beyonce wants to give me a lot of money for my campaign. I have to also have campaign support from the people that I will be governing or in control of. The bill would also require that all states to use independent redistricting commissions to draw out our electoral maps. Because currently as it stands, the Secretary of State of each state and maybe even a committee, they draw out the electoral maps of the states, and if it happens to be a Republican, they'll draw the map to where pretty much it's called gerrymandering, and they will draw it in such a way that all of the votes are pretty much heavily favored to go towards them so that they can stay in power and that they can stay in office, which I don't even need to tell you is unfair in and of itself. So the bill would also require that all political ads on TV or anywhere else will require that the person, corporation, union, or other organization that paid for that ad would have to say on the commercial, I approve this message. So instead of just hearing Donald Trump on a political ad saying, my name's Donald Trump, I approve this message, if he was supported by the Ku Klux Klan who gave him money for that ad, they too would have to be on that ad and say that they supported Donald Trump and that they paid for that message. I use the term that this bill, the For the People Act, would do all of these things because that's what they would do if the Republican-controlled Senate voted to approve it and Donald Trump signed it into law. Which again, I'm going to cover that process again in the next segment. But the Republican Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, has already come out on the record and said that this bill is dead on arrival when it gets to the Senate, and he's not even going to call it up to the floor for a vote. So, we already know it's not going to become a law. Now. Or yet, I should say. And we all know that the corrupt Donald Trump, of course he's going to sign it, right? I doubt it. So, far be it from me to let you think that the Democrats were the only ones that were able to get things done during this federal government shutdown after they were sworn in. Here's Republican Senator Cory Gardner, and he was the first Republican to break away from all other Republicans and demand an end to the government shutdown with or without Trump support. Following his decision, there were certain other Republican senators that came out and declared that it was time for the shutdown to end as well. So, with all these Republican senators that are coming forward to end the shutdown, it's causing more and more pressure to be put on Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to get him to stop avoiding the government shutdown fight. So, and that is just exactly what Mitch McConnell's planning on doing. He's planning on hiding on the sidelines like a coward, not involving himself in the talks between the Democrats and the House of Representatives, the Democrats in the Senate, not involving himself in governing the country and being a responsible senator. He decided that he was going to hide on the sidelines and sell all of this fake news that it was the Democrats' fault that the government shut down. And this is simply fake news. It's fake news. And I'm going to say it one more time. It's fake news. It's the Republicans' fault and it's Donald Trump's fault. Because in that same breath, Mitch McConnell also came out and said that he was not going to bring any bill to the United States Senate floor if it did not have Donald Trump's seal of approval, which effectively means he's putting all power behind Donald Trump, which is just sad. I cannot say this enough, though. do not take these Republican senators that are coming forward saying we need to end the government shutdown as a display for them suddenly developing a conscience and actually caring, because they do not. Full stop. They don't. They don't give a damn. The Republican senators are only doing this because they have far more seats up for re-election in the 2020 elections than the Democrats do. And with the way that the Republicans in the House got their asses handed to them in the 2018 midterms, certainly the Republican senators know that they're in for shellacking as well. So you would think that they would have their act together and that Mitch McConnell would call all of the proper bills to the floor, but no, because he's a stubborn Republican. I mean, that's literally what a Republican is known to be, is stubborn, hard-headed. So anyways, I can go on and on and on about my disdain, my hate, my how much I revile the Republicans, but I'm not going to bore you guys with that. However, I do have a shitload more news to report to you right after this break.
Brothers and sisters, it's time. And I know you can feel it. 2. Let's fight for those who fight for us.
3.
You see, something's happening in America. When we stand together, we have the power.
So, as you all may know, we're in the newest, the latest, the third Donald Trump government shutdown to have occurred within 2018 alone. And I could spend a lot of time explaining to you all exactly why it is Donald Trump's shutdown, why he owns it, and why I have named this segment #TrumpShutdown. But I'm not going to waste your time with all of that. I just want to point out that this shutdown is occurring simply because Donald Trump is requesting, he may like to use the word demand, but he's requesting $5.6 billion to be approved by Congress for him to build that damn wall that's never going to happen. It's not going to happen, especially not with the Democrats running the House. And that's why I say that he's requesting it and not demanding it, because usually when people demand things, they get it. He's requesting it because he's not going to get it, so it effectively can't be a demand. So anyways, he wants $5.6 billion, and he's claiming he's not going to approve of any federal spending bill unless the Democrats and the Republicans and everybody gives him this $5.6 billion, which, again, is not going to happen. I mean, he hasn't even spent the other money that he was allocated in 2018 to update the current border structures. But I want to begin unpacking this segment by discussing the political implications that Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to face and are facing due to this shutdown. Up first, the first implication is, wasn't Mexico supposed to be paying for this border wall? I mean, that is effectively what Donald Trump repetitively said over and over and over again in 2016, in 2017, and in 2018. Everyone remembers how he constantly kept saying that Mexico was going to pay for it. And just like we all remember Trump kept saying Mexico was going to pay for it, I'm sure we all remember that the then president, Mexican president, Vicente Fox, embarrassed Trump when he went on TV and said he was never going to pay for, quote, Trump's fucking wall. Words I would certainly use as well. So, if you can't remember those precious moments, let me remind you of them.
Country. We're going to make them pay for that wall. Now, the wall
The southern border wall. Is your plan still to have Mexico pay for the wall?
Yes, it will. One way or the other, Mexico is going to pay for the wall. That's right. It
sir-
may be through reimbursement, but one way or the other, Mexico will pay for the wall. We're right now. No, Mexico will pay for the wall. It may be through reimbursement. We need the wall. It's imperative. We may fund it through the United States, but ultimately, Mexico will pay for it.
In the end, Mexico's paying for the wall. They're going to pay for the wall, and they're going to enjoy it, okay? They're going to enjoy it.
I'm not going to pay for that wall. He should pay for it. He's got the money.
So the former Mexican president made those comments And now, presently in 2019, Donald Trump is still sadly claiming that Mexico is going to pay for this border wall, which is not going to happen. He's now requesting to use, again, our taxpayer money to pay for this wall that no one wants and the majority of America does not agree with. So, quote, he, being Trump, said the wall would be paid for by Mexico through savings to the United States under a new North American trade agreement. But the trade agreement has yet to be approved by Congress, ding, and trade experts said much savings are uncertain, ding ding. He also wrote on a Twitter post that much of the wall has already been fully renovated or built. That's a lie. This is not true. Some wall and fencing has been replaced during the Trump administration, but there is little evidence that new barriers have been established along the 2,000-mile border, end quote. And let me just point out and say that $5.6 billion isn't going to even scratch the surface of what a wall composed of 2,000 miles of wall is going to really cost. So this whole thing is just ridiculous. But before moving on to the second political implication from Trump's shutdown, I want to review exactly how a bill becomes a law, like I said I was going to do in the last segment. So, first, the House of Representatives must take up the issue, such as federal government spending and keeping the government open, and compose a bill to address how money will be allocated or spent for the federal government. Then, the House of Representatives must have 218 out of 435 votes to approve of that proposed bill. And once that bill has been approved, it gets moved to the Senate, where they can do one of three things. They can approve it without changes, approve the bill with changes, or completely reject it and make their own federal spending bill from that point. In order to approve a federal spending bill in the Senate, there must be 60 yes votes to approve it. So whatever is voted on and approved of by the Senate then gets passed back to the House of Representatives so that they can have another vote to approve, change, or reject the Senate's version of the federal spending bill. Once a simple majority, again, of 218 votes out of 435 is obtained, the House of Representatives approves the federal spending bill for a second time. It must then go back to the Senate for a second time. Once the federal spending bill is back in the Senate does the same thing of approving it with 60 votes, changing it, rejecting it, creating a new one, whatever. At any rate, if there are any new federal spending bills created or changes to the original one, either in the House or in the Senate, it must go back to the other side of Congress for approval. So if the House makes a bill, the Senate gets it, they approve that version, it goes back to the House, and they make changes, and then it goes back to the Senate. The Senate must approve those changes, or it just doesn't pass. And the same vice versa for the House of Representatives. Once the federal spending bill is approved by the Senate for the second time, it must pass both the House and the Senate twice. The federal spending bill then finally goes to the desk of a legitimate president whenever we get one. From that point, he or she can do one of two things. That legitimate president can sign the bill into law, or that legitimate president can veto or reject that bill, which will cause Congress to have to start from square one or negotiate. So now that we have went through that, some might say ridiculously long process, I think that it is a little long, but it is certainly well needed, so that way the best interests of us as the American people is protected. We can now move on to the second political implication of Trump's shutdown. So, Democratic Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, she's playing a very deep and a very dangerous game of politics, and I am here for it. On her first day in the position, for the second time, the House Speaker passed a government spending bill that had already been approved of by the Republican Senate in December of 2018. But here's the genius behind Nancy Pelosi's politics, and I just love it. The Republicans in the Senate are now too afraid to go against Donald Trump and to approve the bill that they had just approved in 2018, because now Trump has changed his mind, saying he doesn't want to have anything to do with that version of it. So Trump is only rejecting that bill because he got a verbal lashing from two racist Republican do-nothings named Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh, which, as you can see, they are a special kind of people. So the leader of the Republican-controlled Senate, again, Republican Senator Mitch McConnell, he showed the purest form of weakness because, as I stated earlier, this is what he had to say about the government shutdown.
But we did so with an understanding that no further votes will occur until the President and Senate Democrats have reached an agreement to resolve this. Let me say that again. We pushed the pause button until the President, from whom we will need a signature, and Senate Democrats, from whom we will need votes, reach an agreement. The legislation that House Democrats are reportedly planning to introduce and be voted on tomorrow will not be a serious contribution to the negotiations that are going on between the administration and the incoming Democratic majority in the House. It isn't comprehensive. It ignores the needs of border security. It's exactly the kind of proposal you'd expect if the incoming House Democrats were choosing to stage a political sideshow rather than doing the hard work of helping to govern the country. In other words, a total non-starter.
So yes, that's right, America. Instead of running the United States Senate as the co-equal branch of government that it is, the Republicans, whom are the majority and controlling party in the Senate, are refusing to do their job and end this shutdown, all because of their boss, Donald Trump, got his feelings hurt. Which, wow, we're talking about 60, at least 50-year-old plus, or 50 years old and older men acting like this. I mean, when I remember being a child and always having the adults say that this is grown folks' business. Well, grown folks' business apparently seems to just be the adult version of kids' business. So, I say that the Republicans are refusing to do their job because the Senate has a special kind of authority. That if Donald Trump were to veto a bill that came out of the Senate for the second time, like we just reviewed, the Senate could override his veto and make the bill into law with their own authority, should they have 2/3 Senate majority vote to override that veto. Yet the Republican thugs in the Senate would never do that because they're too scared of Donald Trump. The Republicans are refusing to reapprove their same bill, which brings me back to my original point of this is all part of Nancy Pelosi's plan. This is exactly what she wants them to do. Nancy Pelosi expected the Republicans to do this, just like the rest of us, and the Republicans in the Senate, that she expected that they would refuse to reapprove their same bill and override Trump's veto should they have the opportunity to do so. And by doing this, the Republicans provide more and more and more evidence as to why they are the blame and they own this entire government shutdown, because Donald Trump and the Republican thugs in Congress are the party of no, the party of opposition, the party of do nothing, the party of let us be rich, let us be white, let us be supreme. That is exactly what the Republican Party is about. And if you don't believe me when I say this, that this is Nancy Pelosi's master plan, why don't you take her word for it? Quote, a short-term spending bill passed the Senate by voice vote this month in December after both McConnell and Schumer endorsed it. Schumer and Pelosi said it would be at the height of irresponsibility and political cynicism for Senate Republicans to now reject the same legislation that they have already supported, end quote. So there you have it all in a nutshell. This girl knows this lady, this woman, I want to give her respect, knows exactly what she's doing. And I'm here for it. I'm so excited for it. The third political implication of Donald Trump's government shutdown is not only this government shutdown a piss poor political maneuvering tactic by Donald Trump. But Donald Trump, during the shutdown, refuses to get out of his own way to achieve his goals. On Wednesday, January 2nd, 2019, there was a meeting scheduled between Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Democratic Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who leads the Democrats in the Senate, where there was hope that there would be some progress on ending Trump's petulant government shutdown. Before the meeting took place, however, Trump's so-called vice president, Mike Pence, compromised with the Democrats, saying that he could get Trump to sign off on a bill that gave him $2.5 billion instead of the $5.6 billion that Trump is requesting. Also before the meeting, Trump threw Mike Pence, again his own so-called vice president, under the bus as he then went behind Mike Pence's back on an interview and said that he was going to completely reject the compromise. So this is in addition to Trump rejecting a compromise from Republican senators to get the $5.6 billion in wall funding in exchange for a law to protect the Dreamer immigrants that were here under Obama's presidency. Obama's legitimate presidency. Let me just say that. So, the fourth political implication of Trump's shutdown is clearly that he feels that this wall is far more important than the hundreds of thousands of federal employees that are being forced to take a leave of absence vis-a-vis being furloughed or to work without pay. While Trump is continuing his self-destructive path with his government shutdown, we do still have some noble and respectable politicians in this world, and thank God. Take Democratic Congresswoman Mickey Sherrill and Democratic Congressman Max Rose, for example. These two are refusing to accept their earned salaries as members of the House of Representatives until the shutdown is over. So, I mean, what a respectable and noble thing to do. I mean, it's one thing for politicians to get up and say they're going to do this and they're going to do that and they're going to be such a great person, and then it's another thing for them to lie about it or just to come out of the gate lying like Donald Trump does. But for someone to actually do what they say they're going to do and mean it is just a great thing to see, because it's such a rare element in today's society, which is just, it's very saddening. So the fifth political implication from Don the Con's government shutdown came this past Friday on January 4th, when Trump said that he was going to invoke a state of emergency, which would give him the authority to use funding that he already has. Instead of using it for what it's allocated for, he would use it to build his wall. Right? He's going to declare a state of national emergency to give him special powers to use the funding however he wants to use the funding. And I chuckle at that because, we're not even going to go into that. Quote, "I can do it if I want. Absolutely," Trump said of his ability to invoke emergency powers to build the wall. "We can call a national emergency because of the security of our country. We can call a national emergency and build it very quickly. But if we can do it through a negotiated process, we're going to give it a shot," end quote. And I can't, you guys know that every time I read a quote from him where he's talking, it's literally very difficult for me to decipher through it because, I'm not saying I'm the most intelligent person or the smartest person, but that gibberish was something that a second grade mind would come up with. But there are two very rudimentary reasons as to why Donald Trump cannot use a declaration of national emergency as a means for his border wall. Number one is that the United States Constitution has two very specific provisions that expressly forbid all branches of our United States military, the armed forces, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and all the other armed forces, they cannot execute domestic, which is to say local or state level laws. They cannot do that at all. Quote, a key provision rooted in 1878 was added to the law in 1956 and declares that whoever willfully uses any part of the Army or the Air Force to execute a law domestically shall be fined under the title of imprisoned or my God, I'm all over the place today, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 2 years, except when expressly authorized by the Constitution or Act of Congress. Another provision grounded in a statute or law from 1807 and added to the law again in 1981 requires the Secretary of Defense to ensure that any activity, including the provision of any equipment or facility or the assignment or detail of any personnel, any military personnel, must not include or permit direct participation by a member of the Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marine Corps in a search, seizure, arrest, or other similar activity unless participation in such activity by such member is otherwise authorized by law, end quote. So, there you have it. Those are those two provisions that basically say you cannot use the military to execute state law, which it will then be a state law issue to make the border wall, and you can't use the army to build the wall, which is something that Trump has toyed around with in his wicked mind. Number two, the second reason Trump cannot declare this national emergency and use it for the wall, I'm just going to use this next quote to say the point for me. Quote, "It is even less plausible for the so-called president to suspend these restrictions under the National Emergencies Act of 1976. From the Great Depression through the Cold War, former legitimate presidents systematically abused emergency powers granted them by Congress in some 470 statutes, culminating in the Watergate fiasco. In response to this, the first section of the 1976 Act terminated all existing emergencies and created a framework of checks and balances on the legitimate president's arbitrary will," end quote. And we all know the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives would never let him get away with this foolery. So basically, what that whole bunch of gibberish boils down to is there is now a law where if we have a legitimate president ever again, and he's in the White House and he wants to declare a national emergency, the House of Representatives can say, nah, we ain't doing that. And they can basically overrule him on that. So if Donald Trump were to think he would ever make such a foolish decision, he would be very, very hugely embarrassed should he make such a dumb decision, which I'm sure he will, and I'm sure I will be reporting on it at some point in the future. So the final political implication is the fact that Trump is using his latest government shutdown as a negotiation tactic. You know, using government shutdowns as a means to negotiate, it takes a certain sick person to do that, because when we're in a government shutdown, and you clearly are using it as your negotiation tactic, to me that says that you blatantly do not care or give a damn about the well-being, the needs, the impact that it has on the lives of everyday Americans. And to use such a strategy to achieve a selfish goal such as some outdated, archaic, ridiculous wall it's something that the word pitiful doesn't even come close to describing. It literally takes a very special person with a very special mind to think of something like that. So, moving on, I'm sure that you will trust me when I tell you that there are several other implications other than the political implications related to this government shutdown that are felt currently or will be felt by all people at some point. I want to take some time to explain some of the personal or social effects that this government shutdown is currently having or will have on the American people. To begin, we all know that January marks the beginning of the glorious season known as tax season, right? And I mean, who doesn't enjoy receiving a nice big lump sum of money from the government, you know, because they did earn it, it is owed to them. Other than the people who might be doing some tricky business with their taxes, and you guys know how you can finagle around that more than I do. But anyways, quote, "But if the government shutdown drags on longer, there could be delays and other serious problems at the IRS. For one, the IRS's contingency plan only explained how the agency would handle the first 5 business days through December 31st of a shutdown. As the shutdown lasts longer, the agency will have to rework its plan and head into more uncertain territory that could demand, for example, that agency employees show up to work without pay. Furthermore, what that also implicates is there's going to certainly be big delays in all those tax returns that people were expecting to get, which means people who are maybe going to use it to buy a new car, which is why we suddenly see so many car commercials in January and February and March. It's probably not going to happen when you think it's going to happen, thanks to Donald Trump. So don't get mad at me, get mad at him. So then there's the issue of travel, and we all know how frustrating, annoying, time-consuming, energy-consuming traveling can be, especially if you're traveling by plane. So just getting through the security part of airplane travel is just in and of itself a world or a beast of its own, right? Well, in true cause and effect fashion, Donald Trump's shutdown has led to TSA agents, which is all of our airport security agents, are now calling off from work at such a rate that it has caused them to make national headlines. We're literally making national headlines because people are calling off. Let that sit in. Quote, airport security workers around the country are opting to call in sick rather than work without pay, and good for them, widening the ripple effects of the partial government shutdown to include travelers and everyday Americans. According to union leaders, hundreds of employees with the Transportation Security Administration called out of work at major airports across the country this week, with TSA officials acknowledging the uptick in absent employees on Fridays. End quote. So let's just strip away the component of inconvenience that comes with not having enough TSA agents present. Let's just take that away for a minute. Let's just consider and assess the fact that because we have less airport security enforcement, that in and of itself is a national security threat. I mean, you understand that, right? If we have less people enforcing security, checking bags, making sure people are safe, that provides ample room and ample opportunity for one of those terrorists that Trump loves to talk about to make their way into a plane and do God knows what with it. So, really let that marinate, because this clown, Donald Trump, has shut down the government, and his major argument is that we have to have this wall to enforce our border security, enforce our national security. Meanwhile, because he can't get it, he's using a government shutdown to negotiate to get the money for the border wall. And his shutdown, his negotiation tactic, has created its own new national security threat, and the fact that we don't have enough airport security people across the country. I really do hope that, I doubt it, but I really do hope that Trump supporters are able to understand that level of thinking and follow that logic, because it's clear-cut, simple, and easy, and I hope that they're happy with the results of it. Another way that Donald Trump's government shutdown is affecting the American people comes to those people that receive food stamps. Quote, but a protracted shutdown would dip deep into its reserve. The USDA has a contingency fund that would cover only a portion of SNAP benefits through February, the Washington Post reports. By March, those emergency funds are expected to run dry, end quote. So, people who are less fortunate, people who are needy, people who need food to survive, come March are going to really be facing hard times. And I don't want to make light of that, because I have been in situations where I've been, hungry and going through my own issues. So I don't mean to make light of that. I mean to make a point that Donald Trump himself and the Republican thugs in Congress are to blame for all of this. But don't fret, don't get upset, don't get sad with the government shutdown, because Donald Trump doesn't care how long it lasts. In fact, on January 4th, after a 2-hour meeting with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leaders, He went on to threaten, to say that he will keep the government shut down for months and even years if he has to. Months to years. And to word that another way, Donald Trump is effectively telling us, the American people, that he does not care about us. His metaphorical border wall, which is a symbol of his racism and his beliefs in white supremacy and his beliefs to make America white again, he believes that that is more important than national security, food stamps, getting people back their taxes. Meanwhile, if you haven't noticed, your paychecks are still having the taxes taken out of them. All that doesn't matter. What matters is his selfish border wall. And the fact that he's choosing a wall as his legacy and his symbol shows you how elementary he is as a person. So kudos, Trump supporters. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And thank you, Russia, for getting him elected. So I want to move on right into this next very short segment, and then we'll take a quick break. And it's another segment of what I call Trumponomics, which is going to detail how Trump is killing the economy, because he is. Don't believe all that bullshit about how he's doing such a great job with the economy and strong job numbers. No, okay? Those job numbers may be true. I mean, they are true. I'm not going to say maybe. They are true. He does have good job numbers. You have it. I give that to you, Trump supporters. I give it to you, Donald Trump. Those are good job numbers. But however, you are destroying the economy in several other ways. So not only was 2018 a very rough year for many people for various personal reasons, it was a terrible year for the U.S. economy when you look at the stock markets as the indicator. The stock market is something that Donald Trump has touted about so boldly and so annoyingly, and he's boasted about how he's done such a great job and how people have such great faith in him. You know, he's just got the most faith of all people from the stock markets and stock investors. However, the stock market at the end of 2018 was the worst it had been in the past 10 years. Quote, the Dow fell 5.6%. The S&P 500 was down 6.2%. And the NASDAQ fell 4%. It was the worst year for stocks since 2008, which is when George W. Bush left office. In only the second year, the Dow and S&P 500 fell in the past decade, meaning under Obama's presidency, his legitimate presidency, the stock market's never dipped this low. The S&P 500 and the Dow were down slightly in 2015, but the NASDAQ was higher that year, end quote. So, Mr. I inherited an economic mess from Barack Obama. Mr. I'm so great and I know how to run businesses. Meanwhile, he's had 6 bankruptcies and he's not paid his employees, is now bankrupting the American economy. Clearly, as you saw from that report. Do not believe the hype. The stock market analysts are not confused on exactly who it is to blame for the stock market's failing. So it's not just me. We all know who it is, which is why I'm doing this show, to get the truth out to whoever wants to hear the truth, whoever wants to be informed. The people to blame are Donald Trump, the Republican thugs in Congress, and, if I could personalize it, Donald Trump's sheer, pure incompetence. This includes, the people who are to blame, includes but is not limited to Donald Trump's asinine trade tariffs, as well as Donald Trump removing the United States from established trade agreements with other countries. And he's done that with Republican support. Donald Trump's administration controlling the Federal Reserve and raising interest rates 4 times this year, with a forecast for even higher interest rates this year in 2019. Republicans claiming bias against companies like Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, and it's not really a bias, it's a no one likes Republicans which is, I mean, that's not biased, we just don't like them. Anyways, those accusations has caused those companies to suffer losses in the stock market, and it should be of note that these companies make up 11%, which is a big number for those companies out of the S&P 500 index. And then there are the Republican tax cuts that are to blame. That added literally trillions, with a T, trillions of dollars of debt to the United States. And there are so many more to go on and so forth and la-di-da-di-da. Okay. We all got the point. It should be noted that the last time the stock markets and economy, like I said earlier, the last time it took such a blow and such a hit was all the way back in 2008, which is when we were in the recession that was caused by George W. Bush and the Republicans that were in Congress at that time. Barack Obama was then elected and had to clean up that mess, and that is the trend of presidents and Congress in this country. We have a Democrat, we have a Democratic Congress, we have a Democratic Senate. They do an amazing job with the economy. FDR with his Medicare and all that other stuff, Bill Clinton ending the deficit that he did, only for Republicans to come and ruin everything. After Clinton left, George W. Bush ruined the economy. Nixon and his scandals, so on and so forth. There's always a history of Democrat does great, Republican destroys it. Democrat has to come and clean it back up, Republican then destroys it again. That's exactly what's happening now. Barack Obama fixed it all, and now we have this buffoon, this orange idiot, destroying it all. It appears to me that this country is a glutton for punishment. Or at least the people that continue to vote for Republicans. I won't demean the whole country. At least the people that are continuing to support these morons. They're gluttons for punishment. Because they'd rather make race. They'd rather make immigration. They'd rather make all these other non-essential issues such big, important things. America is not going to be white again. You're not going to get rid of immigration. I agree that we need to contain the illegal immigration, but you're not going to get rid of immigration overall. And I mean, why not prioritize you and your family's health care with universal health care, enhancing Medicare, fixing the Affordable Care Act? Why not have better education like the Democrats are trying to promote? Why not have more diversity in this country when the immigrants that come here are doing the jobs that none of these white people that don't want immigration are willing to do? So why not have someone who wants to do it? It literally just does not make sense to me. So stick with me. I've got more for you right after this break.
Peaceful, nonviolent protests, including taking a knee at a football game to point out that black men, unarmed, black teenagers, unarmed, and black children, unarmed, are being killed at a frightening level right now, including by members of law enforcement, without accountability and without justice. And this problem, as grave as it is not going to fix itself. And they're frustrated, frankly, with people like me and those in positions of public trust and power who have been unable to resolve this or bring justice for what has been done and to stop it from continuing to happen in this country. And so nonviolently, peacefully, while the eyes of this country are watching these games, they take a knee to bring our attention and our focus to this problem to ensure that we fix it. That is why they are doing it, and I can think of nothing more American than to peacefully stand up or take a knee for your rights anytime, anywhere, any place.
All right, so you guys, we're moving on to a more lighter segment. I'm sorry, I'm really enjoying using my iPad instead of my traditional red paper for the show. I really like this setup. I'm going to use it more often, but that's beside the point. We're going to move on to a lighter segment. It is my favorite segment, one that me and my producer slash best friend Andrea came up with, and it's called I Cannot Be Bothered, where I'm going to review with you or give you the Cliff Notes version, so to speak, of the most stupid stories that made national headlines. And I'm going to also give you the reason of why I find those stories to be utterly preposterous. Okay? Number one, when it comes to the Republican Party and Democratic House of Representative member Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez having a "you got served" street fight out in the public, I cannot be bothered. In their latest attempts to bully and control women, the Republicans took a shot at the newly elected Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez when they released a nearly 10-year-old video. Literally, from 10 years ago, they released this video of Alexandria reenacting the dance scene from The Breakfast Club, which is this movie. I only know it because they showed it to us in high school while she was in college. Okay? To make matters worse, the Republican Party tried to lie and say that she made this video in high school, which I don't even see why that would be a problem. I was shown the movie when I was in high school, so anyways, the video, as you can see, is playing on the screen, and it was recorded when she was in college, not in high school. Alexandria retaliated by doing another dance video. By this time, it was at the U.S. Capitol, which is where the House of Representatives and Senate are located. Now, I simply cannot be bothered with this video for two essential reasons. Or, I mean, not just the video, but the whole entire deal. For two essential reasons. Number one, because me as a person, I will never, ever tolerate any man, no matter what side of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, Independent, no matter what race, no matter what religion, no matter what age, no matter anything. I will never idly sit by and tolerate the mistreatment of any woman, no matter what her sins or wrongdoings are. I will never sit by and tolerate it and just be quiet about it without taking up for that person. So that's the first reason why I cannot be bothered with this. Number two is because this is the second time that this group of old white men that is the Republican Party, this is the second time that they've attempted to bully this woman within 1 week of her being sworn in as a congresswoman. They attempted, well, they didn't attempt to do it, they did do it. They booed her as she stood up to give her vote when Nancy Pelosi was being elected as the House Speaker. And while they think that this is cute or that it's funny or whatever they think about it, what it really shows is their pure fear of her and her potential. So Alexandria, if you ever come across this, keep doing what you're doing, girl. Whether I agree with it, they agree with it, no matter what. Because clearly you got the Republicans shook. Now, number two. When it comes to Mitt Romney giving a supposedly scathing rebuke of Donald Trump, I cannot, will not, won't ever be bothered. On January 2nd, 2019, the newly elected Republican senator from Utah, Mitt Romney, who is the same guy that ran against Obama in 2012 and lost, he wrote an op-ed piece for the Washington Post. And in that piece, Mitt Romney said that Trump's greatest shortfall has been shaping the character of the country, okay? And that he would support Trump and policies that Trump has that he supported, but he would speak out against any politics or policies that Trump comes up with and he doesn't agree with. And then he attempted to blast Trump by saying that Trump has not risen to the mantle of the office he's in. So, as a Democrat, I would like and love to see many more Republicans stand up, do the right thing, be true conservatives, not racists, but conservatives. I would love to see more of that, as long as it's coming from a genuine place, and as long as they're standing up against Donald Trump from a genuine place. Mitt Romney, however, is nothing more than another thirsty Republican thug seeking some attention for doing the right thing, which is why I cannot be bothered with this. This is in addition to the fact that I don't see this op-ed as scathing. If anything, it was a lukewarm reproach, a sort of I'm telling on you snitching kind of a moment, and it only occurred because Mitt Romney now has an audience. I cannot rule out also that this whole op-ed was coordinated between Mitt Romney and Donald Trump as a means to distract the media from what they're really probably doing behind the scenes, which is more corrupt behavior. I can't confirm it, but I also can't rule it out. Next up, Trump and his lying habit. You already know I cannot, will not, won't ever, have not, blah, blah, blah. I cannot be bothered. On December 2nd, two immigrant children, one 8 years old and the other 7 years old, they died while in the custody of Donald Trump's detention centers for the immigrants that are seeking asylum from their countries here in the U.S. The loss of any innocent child, the loss of a life of any innocent child, to me is one of the most infuriating, frustrating, saddening events to ever occur in anyone's life. What's even more maddening is that instead of offering basic decency, courtesy, and respect to those people who have lost a loved one, he didn't offer condolences. He didn't offer those famous thoughts and prayers that Republicans seem to not have enough of. Donald Trump instead opted to use those two children as political pawns. Because following the deaths of these two boys, Donald Trump took to Twitter like the little fangirl that he is, and he lied yet again, trying to say that it was the Democrats' fault that these children lost their lives. Wow, Donald Trump, just wow. It should already be clear why I cannot be bothered with this story. For one, it's beyond shameful that we're so low in the gutter as a society and with our social norms in this country that we're literally using the death of innocent children as political pawns for our selfish gains. And then secondly, the fact of the matter is this: there have been no deaths of immigrant children that were being detained by the Department of Homeland Security for the past 10 years. I repeat, there have been no children deaths in Department of Homeland Security for 10 years. Meanwhile, now Donald Trump has accrued two children's deaths within 1 fucking month. Make America great again, right? Fourthly, when it comes to Trump thinking he has a chance going against the Obamas, I, nor Michelle, nor Barack we cannot be bothered. On Sunday, December 30th, 2019, the Donald Trump and his delusion got together, like the fangirls they are, and composed a tweet accusing the Obamas of having a wall around their house. Which you shouldn't have to ask. You should already know if it's coming from his thumbs or from his mouth. I've cussed enough today. It's a lie. Unless you consider a fence a wall, then it's a lie. But if you consider a fence a wall, you can call it the truth. But we should probably go look at a real wall. An anonymous neighbor that was interviewed by Bustle, who came out with the story, stated the following, quote, "Trump has a very active imagination." I'm sorry. Trump has a very active imagination. There's a fence that goes along the front of the house, but it's the same as the other neighbors have. And it's tastefully done, end quote. When I was composing this part of the show, I really literally busted out laughing when it got to the "it's tastefully done" part. I love it. And this quote alone is the sole and only reason why I cannot be bothered with this shenanery, foolery, buffoonery of this story, this headline. Finally, when it comes to Donnie T pretending that he doesn't know why he should be impeached or in prison, I cannot be bothered. During that second meeting with Donald Trump and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leaders, In a manner similar to a child asking his parent why he is in trouble, Donald Trump literally asked Nancy Pelosi, quote, "Why does everyone want to impeach me, Nancy?" I cannot be bothered with this because either Donald Trump is truly demented, like the rumors and the people are saying he is, or he is truly fully aware of his criminal conduct and he's just trying to act blind of it. Either way, it does not work. Both of which, whether he's demented or whether he knows of his criminal conduct, mandate that he be removed from office. He knows it, I know it, and everyone knows it, and he doesn't have any doubt about it. To quote him. Up after the break, we're going to quickly review certain progress and certain updates of Robert Mueller's investigation.
The results from those primary elections, women winning big.
This year's elections are shaping up to make political history for women.
Tuesday was a historic night for female candidates, and the numbers are only going to go higher.
Victories pushed the number of women nominees running for the House to at least 183.
Women are now the major party nominees for governor in 11 states.
And D.C. is about to get its first Muslim congresswoman. Democrat Rashida Tlaib won the primary for Michigan's 13th congressional district.
In about two-thirds of the races, Democratic primaries this year, where there has not been an incumbent and there's been a woman running against a man, the woman has won.
History being made in Georgia. Stacey Abrams won the Democratic primary for governor, making her the nation's first black woman to lead a major party's ticket for governor.
I hope that you will all join us in our fight for the future.
It's just amazing what women are doing. They feel this so deeply.
In a lot of ways, this is a response to Trump. Women are stepping up.
Is the future female?
Yeah, I think for the Democrats in 2018, it sure looks that way.
Okay, everybody, it is now time for an update to the Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller's investigation into Donald Trump's collusion with Russia. Meet Samuel Patton, and I'm not quite sure why he has the W, but goes by Samuel. But whatever. He is facing charges for lying to the United States Senate, failing to register as a foreign lobbyist, and for illegally funneling $50,000 of money from an unknown Ukrainian to Donald Trump's inaugural committee. He is also known for being currently in business in dealing with a Russian government associate named Konstantin Kilimnik, who is not relevant at this time. But the fact that he is currently in business against a Russian government associate is relevant. As far as we know right now, Samuel Patton's involvement in Trump's collusion with Russia is that he illegally obtained tickets by funneling that $50,000 to Trump's inaugural committee as a means to obtain tickets to Trump's inauguration for a Ukrainian and a Russian that have very close ties to this man, convicted felon and former Trump campaign chairman, Paul Manafort. So for whatever reason, reports have now come out and shown that Samuel Patton is still, to this very moment, having secret dealings with prosecutors working for Robert Mueller. Quote, in a secret filing Monday meant to update a judge on his case and whether he should proceed to sentencing, prosecutors revealed nothing. Instead, they filed the entire status update under seal, giving no public reason for keeping details of this case private. End quote. And while this piece of news related to Mr. Mueller's investigation is not the juiciest per se, it is something that we all definitely want to keep our eyes on moving forward. We've also learned that Robert Mueller's grand jury has received an extension of 6 additional months. The grand jury assigned to Robert Mueller was set to expire over the weekend, heading into New Year's. But a federal judge approved 6 additional months, which is the maximum amount of time that a federal judge can approve a grand jury's. It's the maximum amount of time of an extension that a federal judge can approve according to federal rules or whatever, federal court rules. But if you're like me, you have an intrigued mind, you want to know the reason why this grand jury got extended. I mean, it didn't get extended for no reason at all, right? It's obvious that Mr. Mueller is onto something in this unfinished investigation, and my impatient spirit wants to know what that something is. This extension does also tell me that since a federal judge authorized it, there's definitely a there, meaning there is some kind of illegal activity or implication of Donald Trump. We just don't know what it is right now. Also, this extension tells me that Mr. Mueller is living up to his reputation of being one of the most thorough, proficient, and efficient prosecutors within this country. The last piece of news we got on Special Prosecutor's progress wasn't really news per se, but it was an opinion article written by Alan Steinberg, whom is a former advisor to former President George W. Bush. This is what Alan had to say about Trump's future in the White House. Quote, Trump will be removed from office by the constitutional impeachment and removal. Trump will not be removed from office by the constitutional impeachment and removal process, Steinberg wrote in the Star Ledger. Instead, the self-processed supreme deal maker will use his fake presidency as a bargaining chip with federal and state authorities in 2019, agreeing to leave office in exchange for the relevant authorities not pursuing criminal charges against him, his children, or the Trump organization, end quote. Now I want to repeat that this is not confirmed, it is not official, it is total speculation. I will also note that although it's speculation, Allen did bring supporting arguments for why he believed his theory would be the way Trump is gone from office. Quote, aside from the legal nightmares facing Trump in his fake presidency, it appears virtually impossible for Trump to be re-elected in 2020. The economy appears headed for a severe recession, ding, as evidenced by the recent plunge in the stock market, ding ding, which appears on pace for its worst December since the Great Depression, ding 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 ding. There are only 2 years left in Trump's presidential term, fake presidential term, with his approval ratings in an abysmal state and the forthcoming recession making it near impossible for Trump to stage a political recovery. It appears most likely that he will use the continuation of his fake mock presidency as a bargaining chip, end quote. So, I certainly will be watching and waiting to see how this pans out and how Trump is effectively removed from office, because it is a day that I am planning to just let it all hang out, party like it's 1999. I don't know, but it's going to be an extreme day for me. And as we move forward with our impatient waiting for Mr. Mueller to bring forth the hammer of justice upon Donnie T, according to Vox.com, here are the top 5 things we should be watching for throughout 2019. Number 1, determination of whether or not Mueller has anything to confirm Trump-Russia collusion. Number 2, we need to see if Trump will try to prematurely end the Trump-Russia collusion investigation, as he's openly threatened to do. Number 3, we need to be watching for more big indictments of Trump's co-conspirators. We need to, number 4, see and assess what will happen to Mr. Mueller's findings and evidence, to the extent of we need to determine whether they will be made public or kept in private. And number 5, we need to get down to the nitty-gritty on why there was so much foreign government money illegally given to Trump's inauguration committee. Keep your eyes peeled, America. Watch this space, and I will come to conclude after the break.
Damning the differences and deciding that what unites us is far stronger than the color of our skin, how many generations we can count ourselves an American, or whether we just got here yesterday, who we love, who we pray to, whether we pray at all, who we voted for last time. None of that small stuff matters now. It is the greatness to which we aspire and the work that we're willing to put into it to achieve it, by which we will be known going forward.
Okay, so moving forward with this segment, I've come to conclude, which has been featured on literally every single episode of every podcast I've ever done. I'm moving to not using the teleprompter that I have for this segment like I do for all the other segments, because when I use the teleprompter, it again makes me feel like I'm removing the emotional or the humanistic element from the show, and I do not want to lose that element at all. Because we are discussing real life and we're discussing politics. This is not entertainment. This is not reality TV. This is not any of that stuff. This is real life, and we need to keep the human side of it applicable, relevant, and up to date. I had a completely different piece to present for this I've Come to Conclude segment. However, I have chosen to scrap it because there were certain updates that now make this piece irrelevant to this segment. But I do want to address the people, the critics, I'll say, most likely Republicans, that say that, oh, Brandon, you should stop name calling on the show. Oh, Brandon, you should stop cussing on the show. Oh, Brandon, you shouldn't be so aggressive. The truth hurts. I have done nothing more than work my ass off. And my producer, Andrea, has done nothing more than work her ass off to bring facts, to bring truth, to bring light to what's going on in politics and what's going on in our government. And if you're feeling a certain kind of way about the way that I say things, and you genuinely are uncomfortable with them, I do apologize, but I'm not going to not be me to accommodate you. I mean, that's just the way that life goes. And then the people who are just saying it because you're Republicans or you're offended, get the hell out of here. If you're bothered by me calling Trump a buffoon or stupid or idiotic, it's my personal opinion, and from my point of perception, Trump is an idiot. He is a moron. He is a buffoon. He is everything that I've called him. I would not call him anything that I did not believe him to truly be, and I would not call him anything that I would be too afraid to say to his face, because I'm not one of those fickle, fake, phony Republicans or fickle, fake people, period. The other thing is a lot of politics is difficult to talk about, and I understand that certain people get uncomfortable and get bothered by certain of the things that I present on this show. And they may feel attacked. They may feel bothered. They may feel like, I'm just coming after them. But those are your feelings, okay? Those are not the feelings of my Democrat colleagues. Those are not the feelings of my liberal colleagues, my independent colleagues. Those are not the feelings of the people that I won't necessarily want to watch this show. But those are not the feelings of the people that I am trying to connect with or to communicate with. The people I'm trying to communicate with are open-minded people, are people with similar thought processes, people that are open to having a discussion. So, if you have feelings to deal with considering my language or the name calling, take that up with God or whoever else you want to take it up with, because I ain't changing it. To quote Nene Leakes, I said what I said. I ain't changing it. I ain't going back on it. I'm not fixing it. I'm not changing it. It is what it is. And, if you don't want to watch anymore or listen anymore, I'm sorry to see you go, but this is how this show is going to go moving forward. Just like Donald Trump can pussy grab, he can shut down the government for his wall. He can call all Mexicans gangs and rapists. He can support a white supremacist killing another white woman and say that they were very good people. He can call the KKK very good people. But I can't say that he's stupid or an idiot or a moron. No, I'm going to say all of those things because that's exactly what he is. The Republicans in Congress, I call them thugs because that's what they act like. They try to strong arm people. They try to influence, corrupt, and take charge of things that they do not have the authority or the right to do. So again, I'm presenting facts, and I am presenting my view of the facts. I think that that's what I called earlier the humanistic side of it. It's I get to tell you what happened, and I get to tell you why it's important that it happened, and I get to tell you how I feel about it. Now, if you're someone who is strong-willed and won't fold, and you feel like you want to have a debate, discussion, interview, anything like that, feel free to contact me, and we can do that. You can present to me your arguments on why you feel like Trump is not an idiot or a moron or stupid and why the Republicans are not thugs. I'm open to it. I'm open to hearing your perspective. I would actually love to learn more about the Republicans' way of thinking. But until then, I'm going to conclude this episode with those thoughts. I just really wanted to address the critics, address the people that have things that they, are uncomfortable with, and how I will be handling their concerns by not changing who I am and by not changing my show. Because that's the beauty of having your own show, is you get to do it how you want to do it. So that concludes today's episode. Please like, follow, and subscribe to this show, to me, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I can be reached by all those means. And if you didn't know, this show is not only a video or visual YouTube show, it is also an audio podcast that is available on iTunes, Spotify. I have an RSS feed and Google Play Music, all of that stuff. All of that information, my social media, my contact, and all of the information for the different formats of the show are available on my website, backstories-us.com. And I look forward to seeing you guys all next week. I'm sorry for the delay in today's episode. I was out of town visiting my grandmother for the week, who's having surgery tomorrow. And my life has been a whirlwind during these past 3 weeks. I will not be late next week. I promise, I promise, I promise. Next week's show will not be your everyday show on politics.